and that sort of situation. Now, the idea behind this hypothesis, the way I would support it that I'm presenting here, is that the concept of digging a mine underneath and creating a complex exactly under what you're trying to build has been done. For instance, the ancient Romans did this in ancient Paris. So Paris was a Gallic town. It belonged to the Gauls, and it was called Parisi. And what the Romans did as they controlled that area, they changed the name to Letitia, and then they started digging underneath, creating underground mines that were used to collect the limestone, put a pin on that, to then continue the expansion above ground of the rest of the town, which is how they did it. And this was not uncommon in the ancient world. They did that. And in fact, the catacombs of Paris, the underground massive labyrinth that I have covered on a dedicated video, you'll find a link in the description, well, some of these holes and some of these shafts are, in fact, former ancient Roman mines that are still under there, and they can go down up to even 200 meters below ground zero. The Romans were famous, or should we say infamous, for their mining projects all over the place, the Roman Empire, in fact the Republic, even in Britannia, for instance, they did a lot of mining operations in order to then use those stones to build the settlements, because again, the Romans built in stone, which was one of the main differences between how their sort of architecture and the architecture of the, for example, Celtic tribes, which instead tended to predominantly use wood, not only wood, but obviously the Romans were the ones that were extensively building with stone. This is a 1908 map of the mining operation and exploitation of a lot of underground sections of Paris. And again, some of these go back to the 5th century, to the 6th century, and even earlier than that. And some of these go back to ancient Rome. Now, the Roman settlement of Lutetia was expanded through limestone, because that's the kind of rock that was found, together with other types, but this was the main one. And we do know that limestone is indeed what's underneath the pyramids of Giza, and it is one of the main components of the millions of blocks that are used to actually build the core of the pyramids. So, in other words, is it possible that all of these pretty colors do represent man-made structures, considering the fact that some of these are in fact hollow? We have been told these are not columns. They call them pillars, but they did say during the conference that they are hollow inside. So is it possible that these are mine shafts that extend all the way deep in order to collect the stones and then bring them up with some sort of system so that they would collect the raw materials in loco? Now, given this is not a perfect answer, I do understand that we know of open quarries that are not too far from the pyramids that are being used, and we like quarry pits, and we also know that some stones were transported from other locations in Egypt. With that being said, though, that doesn't necessarily exclude the possibility that they also, at the same time, considering the number of blocks in the millions that they needed in order to do this, who knows, maybe they did also get some of that raw material directly from underneath the pyramids. Now, to try and now attack my own hypothesis to see if we can find holes in it, or to also kind of assess how valid it could be, one critique could be the idea that maybe this would make it more fragile. Could things collapse? Now, on one hand, sure, but then again, if these skunks are real, they do have these shafts in it, and it didn't collapse. So these empty areas exist if the skunks are to be believed. So at this point, we're just trying to explain what they could be. And do keep in mind that limestone mines, as I was saying, still exist under Paris. One example will be under the Cochin Hospital in the 14th arrondissement. And it still exists today. It didn't collapse. Now, given some of those under structures had to be reinforced later with walls, but maybe these were built with walls around it, we'll have to see. Maybe, only maybe, that spiral thing that they say they see, perhaps is part of the system used to move the raw stone before it was being prepared. All in all, this is just an idea, just a little hypothesis that I wanted to throw in there. I'm not saying that I know the answer. I'm not even saying that there is something underneath, but at the same time, I'm not saying that there isn't. What I am saying is, dig.